So we just went live and I want to click that. Yep. There you go. Hello and welcome to another virtual author event at the Poison Pen Bookstore. I'm John Charles, and today we're delighted to have back with us virtually one of my favorite authors, Karen Rose, whose new book is Quarter to Midnight. We're also very blessed to have with us best-selling author Jayne Ann Krentz and literary pundit, who's going to help with today's conversation. Before we begin chatting, I would like to let those listening in know that the Poison Pen does have copies of Karen's new book. She's graciously sent us book plates. So if you'd like one, please do go ahead and give us a call or go online to the Poison Pen Bookstore. We would be happy to hold one for you or put one in the mail. We do have a limited supply, so I would say do that sooner rather than later. Now I'd like to welcome Karen and Jayne.
Hello. Hello from Jayne. This is my cue, and I'm going to start off by wild raves about Quarter to Midnight. Karen, I love all your stuff, but this is really, I don't know, this one really caught me. There's just action on every page, and there's relationships on every page. That's your talent, lady. You just put the two together so brilliantly.
Thank you.
Never a dull moment. So I'm thrilled to see you again. I'm thrilled to excited to talk about Quarter to Midnight.
And I'm excited to see you again too. So thank you. Yeah, and this was one of those gift books. You know, I just sat down, and they're not all like that. We wish they were all like that, but this one I started on it, and it just kind of it rolled right on out.
What do you think when you got into the book? What was it? What was the thread that pulled you so quickly through it, or pulled you through it that you had to see how it got to the end? Was there like a relationship?
I don't know. Part of it was relationships. I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed all the relationships. I wasn't expecting the side character, Xavier. There's a side character who becomes very important, and he has a point of view. And I knew he was going to be important, clearly, to the story because he was planned. But his whole posse was unplanned, and they just kept popping up all over the place. And I enjoyed them so much. And, his mother and his mother's friend, and just the banter between them. It was just so much fun. And there was just so much emotion for Xavier returning to New Orleans because, and this isn't a huge spoiler, but he was a 5-year-old in Katrina and witnessed a crime. So that's all I'm going to say. But, he left New Orleans shortly thereafter and hasn't been back. And for him, this is a really emotional time, as it is for Gabe, the hero, as well, because the book starts out with his father being murdered. And it's made to look like a suicide, but Gabe knows it's not. And so, he goes to this private investigating service, which is run by his father's former partner in the New Orleans Police Department, and seeks their help. And Burke, who was the head of the group, he puts Molly Sutton on the task, and they just go for it. So I just think it was they all just kind of meshed together so well. And they were all just so much friends in my head, and it just kind of came out.
Well, to me, part of the appeal of your books is that you do create a cast of characters whose relationships are interwoven, that they form a kind of a family. They form a community, I guess would be a more accurate word. Even the bad guys have their relationships, whether they want them or not. Nobody's just a cardboard character standing there on the page doing one thing or something. And that's just a gift you have. You are, however, dealing with a huge cast of characters, or at least a large cast of characters. So I have to ask process question, just from one author to another. How do you keep track? How do you?
Well, while I'm in the book, it's all there. I mean, they're all there, and they're all talking in my head. And once I'm done with the book, I usually remember them, and, I'll remember, I remember their names. I remember, I know when they have children, and, in their futures, but I do have a little bit of a cheat. And that's my daughter who works for me. She keeps a spreadsheet. And she's the one who's like, Mom, you've used this name too many times. You're not allowed to use. Apparently, I had a thing for receptionist named Stacy. There were 3 of them in 3 separate books, completely different books. She goes, do you realize? I'm like, I had no idea that I even did that. She said it was like Pokemon Nurse Jenny and Officer Joy or whatever, where they have one in every town and they're the same name. So I'm not allowed to use the name Stacy ever again, but she helps me keep track of them. She helps me keep track of like the little details that can come back and bite you, later if you don't remember them. So yeah, she does help me out, but a lot of them they just stick around.
Because you become part of their community too, as the author.
And they're real to me. I'll lament that they did something, on the page at the dinner table. My husband, he's a retired psychologist. He's like, this is where I have to say, they're not real, right? And I'm like, well, they're real to me. And if they're not real to me, they're not going to be real to anybody else. So then but he's satisfied with that answer so far.
Absolutely. Yep. The real to you thing is part of how it works. It's like we live two lives, one in our head and
exactly
one in the real world.
Do you ever like think of something and I'm like, wait, did that really happen? Or was that a scene in one of my books?
I see John nodding. He's something to tell us, John, about
well, I'll just say that I'm at a certain age now where I'm wondering if I need to start Prevagen because I can't remember what's real and what's not. But that's not a writer thing, that's a human thing.
Oh no, maybe that's my problem too.
Well, that leads us to the next question then. Do you consider yourself more visual as a writer or more dialogue driven? I know in the end, it always comes together, but when you hear the story in your head, are you seeing it or are you hearing it?
I'm hearing it. I'm more hearing it. Although if I step back and sometimes I do it without even knowing I'm doing it, and then I realize it, I can see the scenes happening at the same time. But when I'm in it, I'm hearing it more than seeing it.
I totally get that. I'm a dialogue driven writer too. John, you do a lot of reviewing. Do you pick up on that when you go from one author to another, one book to another?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is their voice or their literary style, or I guess they call it brand now. And truly successful writers like you, Jayne, and like you, Karen, have a distinctive voice, and readers connect with it, or in some cases they may not and find a different author, but it's how you're telling your story, and it's almost like your fingerprint, your literary fingerprint.
How would you describe Karen's voice?
I would say she's scary intense in many cases. You definitely picked up on the human relationship part. She's character driven to a degree. I think you really look for seeing the nuances in people and characters, even secondary characters. There's almost always a strong thread of romance that's woven through the story. And I would say that she really connects with a place in most of her books, in this case, New Orleans. So if you want the setting, the whole effect of it, then Karen delivers on all those levels.
Thank you.
That's a good way to lead into the setting, because you do have a fabulous way with settings. And this is, in fact, the start of a new setting, New Orleans. But this is what, third or fourth series that you've done where you focused on a city, and
I think it's the sixth. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm over here counting on my fingers.
Chicago, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Sacramento,
Atlanta, and Philadelphia. I kind of put those two together, Sacramento and Minneapolis.
Okay. So how does that work for you? Do you go there and map everything out and walk through the city? Do you do it online? How's the research work when obviously you don't live in all those places?
No, well, I have lived in a lot of them though, where I've had very good friends or relatives. So I visited a lot. And that was when I first started writing. I said it in Chicago because our uncle, who's kind of a surrogate dad to us, he was living there. And so we would go there every holiday, and I felt like I kind of got a gist of the city. But I grew up in the Baltimore area. I lived in Cincinnati for 15 years, and I have friends in Sacramento. So that's why I picked those places. But I was actually at Book Lovers Convention in 2019 in New Orleans. I was getting ready to pick a new town for, a new series. And I must admit, my reasoning for picking New Orleans was heavily driven by the research trips you could take, to have the food and the swamp tours and, all of that, and the cemetery tours. And then COVID happened. So This one was mostly online, and I was able to connect with locals, who knew the process. They knew the law enforcement process. I connected with one guy who runs a swamp tour company. He was like, well, you could hide a body here, you could hide a body there, and one of the Tina DeSalvo, she was the one who helped me get connected with all those people. And she also had been a reporter during Katrina. And so she shared with me some of her recollections from in the aftermath, during Katrina and the aftermath. And so, yeah, so we, I was able to kind of pick people's minds to get the details that I needed. But I've been to New Orleans a bunch of times myself. And so, I knew the basics, the music, the crowds, the heat, all of those things. And, but I really was sad that we missed the food. My husband cooked Cajun food for us at home. It was good, but not quite the same. So I have not yet given up on my plan to go to New Orleans for some fact finding. So I'm going to have to do that. But yeah, the plan was all kinds of, the research trips, and all my assistants, my husband, they were so excited. We're going to get to go to New Orleans. But so this one was a little bit different.
Well, this is probably a good time to inject a food element that a what do you call it? A public service announcement to all of you out there who are debating about whether or not to read this book. I can guarantee you there's a really good dog in it and a really good chocolate cake. So you can't go wrong with this book.
We're putting the recipe for that chocolate cake is on my website, I think now. My husband developed Gabe's decadent chocolate cake. So it's my husband's recipe, and subscribers to my newsletter got it, and I think we put it on the website now. And it is truly decadent. I mean, I could have a slice like this. It's like way too much. So if you make the cake, have a lot of friends, because you're not going to be able to eat it all yourself.
Oh. Well,
I do have a question for Karen, and actually for you, Jayne, too, because I think you kind of both are quite skilled at this as authors. Karen, you've said that suspense is the villain. And when it comes to creating a villain, you do an excellent job. They're not just cardboard characters. And Jayne, you do the same thing with your villains. They're always kind of quirky and unique. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of the villain as a character in its own person?
I think for me, the villain is the most important character in the book, in terms of the fact that if he's not doing his villainous things, there's no reason for the rest of the characters to be there. So his activities are basically what everybody kind of hangs their coat on. He's a coat rack, for the whole group, and they all just kind of hang on him. If his motivation or her motivation isn't strong enough to carry the whole book, it just falls flat. So that's why I spend a lot more time on my villains than I do the other characters. I figured, they come along for the ride, and I know stuff about them, but they're going to be mostly reacting to the villain up until the point where there's that, it gets to the top of that final roller coaster hill, and then everything comes together and they're able to bring him down. But they're pretty much chasing him all the way through. And so, being kind of reactive and who they are will depend on what they do, and then what they do will actually drive the villain to do different things than I might have even expected. So that's the fun part, that makes every book a little bit different. And I hear people say, oh, it's a formula, which really is a little bit. It's not, but it's no more of a formula than I just say, well, what about a football game? The rules are the same, the field is the same size, but every time you have different teams. Even within a certain day, the teams are going to have different skill sets. The field is going to be, sometimes it's astroturf, sometimes it's grass, sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's snowing. And you throw the same elements together on the same field, and how they interact is what makes the game exciting. If you're a football fan, which I guess I'm not, but if you are, and that's why you come back, game after game after game. And that's why we come back to the stories book after book after book, is because of how everybody interacts.
Well, I think you're quite skilled, Karen, at showing how everyone is the hero of their own story, even the villain or the villainess, I guess we'd say. And that's what makes them in some ways so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
To read.
And sometimes I like to write the ones that are sympathetic. You can see how life may have brought them to the place where they are. You can't condone what they do, but you can understand. On a human level, you can understand. Those are the hardest ones to write, I think, because I always feel bad for them, and I want to make them okay in the end, but I can't do that. It's like,
Yeah,
no
that's
option.
that's a real trap, wanting to fix your characters. Okay, but you break them, and it's like, oh, okay, I'll fix it. No, and then, yeah, I've reached more than one ending where I had to save the hero, the villain for another book. Somehow get away because I just couldn't bear to kill him off at that point in the story. So, have you ever had one change on you where you thought you knew the villain going in and then changed your mind?
Yeah, I did. And I think it was more because I didn't know why he was doing certain things. I had one, and this guy was an arsonist. It was my first arson book. And I was really excited to write an arson book because there's so much chemistry in it. And I was a chemist back in the day. And the first scene, the issue is the people he goes to kill aren't there. They're not home. They've gone on vacation and they've left a pet sitter with their cat. A pet sitter's not supposed to be there either. She's just supposed to come in, clean up after the cat, feed the cat, and leave. But she's there, and he stumbles over her, and he's like, "Well, darn! They're not here. She's here. She's seen me. I have to kill her." But I'm thinking, dang, there's this cat. We can't have the cat get killed. That would be awful. So he puts the cat out. And this cat actually makes the rounds. The cat actually ends up getting saved multiple times. The same cat does in the book. So it's a little bit of levity with it, but I didn't know why. And it wasn't until I got towards the end, I was probably and that was really stressing me out because I didn't know. It was one of the first times I didn't know. And I was about 75% of the way through the book, maybe 80%, where it was like, oh, okay, that's why. And it had to do with his love of animals, which was at the core of, what this traumatic event that had happened to him. But he did change. He was not the character I was expecting. I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting the animal tie to manifest the way that it did. And it really shook me. It shook me a lot. I felt bad for him. I mean, ultimately he killed a lot of people. And the ones he killed, he honestly believed deserved to die. He really did. And again, it was one of those where you look at where he's been and how far he's come, and you can see how it's messed him up. You can see, but I still felt bad. And it was not where I intended him to go.
Dog lives, just in case anybody out there is worried, dog lives.
Yes, the dog in this book is named Shoe, and it's kind of a play on words because Gabe's father's Cajun. He would call his wife ma petite choux, which means my little cabbage, but it's an endearment in French. But that's spelled differently. His restaurant is called Le Petit Choux with an X, and that's a play on words for a pastry. It's a pastry dough. Mm-hmm. But his dog's name is Shoe, like you wear on your feet, because he chews shoes. And so I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with Shoe. He was a good dog, and he lives. He's very brave.
I would just like to say I really appreciate your subtly injecting how to pronounce the shoe into the story, because otherwise I would have had to Google it, put an X on the end of the word, and I'm just.
Well, I've been studying French on Duolingo, and I'm at almost 800 days. I have almost an 800-day streak, and I didn't start because of this book, but my daughter's boyfriend is a Quebecois, lives in Montreal, and French is his first language. And so he helped me with a lot of the French in there, and and made sure that I was doing it right. But I actually started taking the French to talk to him. And then I ended up like, oh, I'm doing New Orleans. I can use this French. This is great.
Do you think your cast of characters is, I assume, a lot of them will go on to the next two books, because this is set up as a trilogy, right? Oh, what do we call that, John?
Quartet.
Quartet?
What?
Quartet.
quartet. Okay, yeah, I like that. That works. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm heading toward is obviously you've got an overarching story arc that you're going to have to follow for 4 books. That's a lot. For me, that would be a long story arc. So what does it look like right now? If we looked in your office, what would that story arc look like?
I know who I've written 2 of the stories. I've written the second one.
Okay.
I mean, I can't say because people haven't read the first one yet, but Burke will obviously get a story. And then there's another character in there who, and it's just a little Easter egg for fans who have been, reading these books all the way through. I don't give this guy's last name. He just gets a first name, but he's important in a previous series, important to one of the characters in a previous series. So I'm wondering how many people are going to kind of pick up on it, and he'll get a book too. But I know what's going to happen to them, but I don't know all the details. And so I've kind of set some things up. It'll be interesting to kind of see how they play. I don't always know. And in this case, I know each individual book, but I don't know how they're all going to connect yet. That usually happens as I go along.
Well, John is a former librarian and now not ex-librarian, because there are no ex-librarians, and now in the bookstore trade. Is there something to the theory that I've been coming to and that I think Karen has been using brilliantly for the past few years about setting up trilogies or quartets, because it doesn't lead to 20 or 30 books in a row that is off-putting to new readers because they wouldn't know where to start. You think our cunning plan is working, or?
Well, before I delve into that, I first want to say, Jayne, you're being very modest about your skills in writing series, because you've created these whole worlds under your different pseudonyms, and now you're bringing them into your books in sneaky little ways that readers will find quite fun and clever. So I think you're a master at that too. I think writing connected books can be a double-edged sword for an author. Both you and Karen are writing romantic thrillers, romantic suspense. So in theory, each book has to stand on its own. Romance readers are not going to be happy if you get to the end of the book and oops, they've broken up again. Read book 2 to find out if they get back together again. So you have to have the book stand, each book has to stand on its own. But a lot of readers do love returning to worlds, like the worlds you create, Jayne, like the worlds Karen creates. So if you can create that world and make those books kind of be connected like neighbors or friends or something, then readers love that. And that's a real skill set that not a lot of authors master, but both of you have. So I guess my question is, for both you and Karen, do you always know going into a series it's going to be this long? Have you been surprised by your publisher who says, oops, we're pulling the cord at book 6, so wrap everything up?
Jayne, you've got a lot more series than I do, so why don't you take that one first?
I've had to pull the plug on them. There was the Lavinia Lake, and I can't even remember the name of it, Tobias.
Yeah.
Back in the day, and that was gonna be my series set in Regency England and on the 3rd book, everybody said this isn't working. I think because people didn't see the relationship resolved in the same characters having a relationship through the book. Some authors can pull that off. I couldn't. It just didn't work for.
Yes, but you've come back and mastered it with your new 1930s series.
Yes, but I use I do what Karen does. I use the same sneaky trick. I have a fresh couple in each book.
Yeah.
And that's our secret, I think, Karen, is that.
It makes it a lot easier. I'm actually trying the first thing you said there, Jayne. I have a series that starts up in March where it's the same couple. And I'll have 2 ongoing series a year. And so this one is set in San Diego. The first book is called Cold-Blooded Liar. And the heroine is a homicide detective. The hero is a psychologist. He's the criminal psychologist. And I'm going to see if I can I'm giving it a try.
I think you will. I know you will, because you've actually had more practice. This is a natural part of your writing skills to carry whole casts of characters forward. So this is going to work brilliantly.
Well, thank you. And I hope so, because I really have enjoyed watching these character groups kind of grow together. It's been a lot of fun.
What's the name of the book in March?
It's called Cold-Blooded Liar.
Yeah.
And the homicide detective is Catherine McKittrick. She goes by Kit, and she's a foster kid, and has this amazing foster family. There's a lot of love in it, and so there's like a lot of foster kids I can pull in, for each book. There was kind of a joke through the first book where they have they have a kid for everything, and at one point they get to the heroine's the family home, and well, she's not here, her car's not here, she drives a Subaru. Well, they're all Subarus. There's like 4 identical Subarus of different colors in the driveway. Oh yeah, one of their foster brothers has a dealership. And so, it's just, it was very, very fun for me.
It's going to work. It's going to work. It was a lot of fun. And but yeah, it is a challenge, and I'm I've read people who've done it really well. There's a lot of people out there who excel at it. So I'm going to cross my fingers, and hope that everybody loves them.
I think you can succeed as long as I think where readers get upset, and this is from my perspective from the bookstore and the library, is when they're looking for something that isn't there. So if they're told it's a romance and they don't find that there, then they may get a little bit disappointed. But if you tell them it's a mystery with a romantic thread or something, then they'll buy into that.
Yeah.
Expectations. You're absolutely right.
That's exactly.
Yeah. And in my Regency series, I had already set all my expectations up, because I'd done so many Regency romances up to that point. Switching gears just didn't catch a new audience. And that's basically what I needed, was another kind of audience. So yeah, I think, but the mystery world understands that. That's a core story in the mystery world.
And this one is more of a mystery. It's more of your classic follow the clues kind of a mystery, which I enjoy as well. I haven't written one quite like this before. So, but the New Orleans series will go on, and then when I get to the end of that, I'll go on to the next city, wherever that is, and wherever I think is going to have the best food. And
Seattle, we're pretty good with food in Seattle. So.
I've been thinking about that. Or Portland, because they've got all those food trucks in Portland. I'm hearing about these things, but, and I have friends in Seattle too. I'll come and see you. But yeah, it is easier when you pick a new couple each time. There's something fresh and fun about that as well. So yeah, that it does make it a lot easier.
So this will be 2 books a year then, on a regular basis. All right.
Year, yeah.
Excellent.
I'm excited. I'm really excited. So it's
I'm excited to read them.
One of the things that both of you do very well is you mix romance and suspense in your books. And I guess my question for both of you as writers is, do you always have, people think when you talk about romantic suspense or romantic thrillers or thrillers with romance, that it's always 50-50. But it can really vary. A book can be 10% romance and 90% suspense.
And this is a great example of it, because the key isn't so much at 50-50, it's making every twist in the romance affect the relation. Every twist in the relationship affects the plot, and every twist in the plot affects the relationship. I guess is what it's that they work together, but you're right, it doesn't have to be 50-50.
And rarely is it 50-50, it depends on the couple, really. It depends on the villain. I wouldn't even know how to categorize it. What do you think? Like, maybe that one seems like it's probably more romance than some of mine. I don't know if that one's a 50-50 though.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. John, you're the reviewer.
No, I would say it's more suspense with strong romantic elements, I guess is how I'd characterize it, or just, you would just call it good, and that would pretty much leave.
Thank you.
You have a gift, Karen, for pulling on the atmosphere of the place. You're very good at setting that atmosphere and New Orleans, of course, works brilliantly for an atmosphere-driven book, but you have a solid sense of place, and your characters know where they are in the city, if you know what I mean. They or whatever city you've chosen, and that comes through to the reader, so they feel like they're there too.
Thank you, because that's a lot of fun, and I know when I was growing up, as a kid in DC, I never dreamed I would be able to see half the places in any of the places in the world that I've seen. But I read about them all. So when I finally got to see them, I was like, oh, I've been here before in my mind, and I like to be able to give other people that if they haven't been to New Orleans, especially if they're not from the United States. I have a lot of readers outside the country, and
it was an international bestseller.
Yeah. I'm really lucky because the people all over the world tend to like murder, and I'm very grateful for this. I like their murder mysteries, and New Orleans, I think people have heard of it, but I think people know about Mardi Gras, but they may not know that there's like a festival every other weekend, I think, in New Orleans somewhere. The party it's not just Mardi Gras, it goes all year round. And there are aspects of New Orleans that I'm not sure the rest of, maybe even the rest of the country knows if they haven't actually been there. And when people who don't live in places where they have that weather, that hot, humid, muggy, you really just can't even appreciate it until you've lived through it. And I've been to New Orleans at all different times of the year, and I swear August and July is miserable. And I live in Florida. I mean, I stay in the air conditioning, but it's giving that experience to people and helping them know what it's really like. It's to me, it's kind of giving back, because that's how I grew up. That's how I visited places that I never dreamed I'd actually ever be able to see.
What surprised you the most about New Orleans when you were researching it?
I think I got so comfortable with it. I don't even know. I'm not even sure how to answer that question. I think I was surprised that the religious aspects are still as strong as they are. It's still a very Catholic town. And, at one point it might be in, I think it's in the make some kind of comment that she was standing in line at a bakery, and she didn't want to, even though she was allowed to cut in front of the line because her friend owns it, she was afraid of the little old ladies in front of her because they just come from mass and they had rosary beads and they didn't look like they were afraid to use them. And my daughter's like, it's Tuesday or Monday morning, they can't be having mass. And I'm like,
yeah,
it's New Orleans. Oh yeah. So I'm like, I go online and immediately I find 3 churches that have a Monday morning mass. And she was like, okay. I stand corrected. But to me, it was, and it's kind of imbued everywhere you go. It's not just something happens on Sunday or Saturday night or something like that. So I guess I knew it, but I didn't really understand it. And of course, living in Florida, we have the gators and the snakes and all of that. That wasn't something I really wanted to think about in the bayou, but it's a big part of it. And I had to, whenever I have to do research on snakes, I have somebody else look it up, because I'm afraid if I Google it, a picture of a snake will come up, and I'm really afraid. So there might've been some surprises there, John. I just didn't see because I was afraid to look.
Can we take a minute and talk a little bit about the suspense aspect of writing it into books, both you and Jayne? For readers that may not be familiar with either of your books, they are very, very intense, very suspenseful, very scary, but neither of you are writers that kind of indulge in descriptions of violence or the graphic element of murder or things like that. It's there, but I think, Karen, you almost take a film noir approach to depicting it.
Yeah, and that's the way I always like to look at it, because I find I get uncomfortable reading it in other books. It's just, I know it happens. My imagination is good enough. Thank you very much. I don't actually need to see it. And I remember watching, and my husband's a big film nut, and we've watched a lot of movies and a lot of film noir. And the thing they don't show, if somebody gets shot, there isn't blood, but and so that part's not scary and that part's not so intense. It's the reactions of people around the victim. And that's where they get the intensity from. And I remember thinking that and realizing I could pull that into my books. So, I think that there's enough. We all know that it happens. We all know. I don't think we have to go into all the gory detail. And when I read a book that somebody does, I tend to skip ahead because I just can't. It's just too much.
I'm the same way. I can't do torture. I think that's the fundamental part of it. It's the cruelty. The act of cruelty is something I just don't want to confront any more than it happened. Silver. I absolutely agree. Do you, I've got this theory that I've been playing with for a few years now, that every author has a kind of a core story, by which I don't mean the setting or the fact that it's a plot driven, a particular kind of, like a science fiction plot or a mystery plot. But I think of it as something more of the elements that compel us to write it in the first place. I'm thinking the emotions we want to grapple with, the conflicts we want to grapple with, and then we find a story to go for that whether we are aware of what we're doing or not. Do you agree? Do you feel like you have a core story that could be defined literally in 2 or 3 words in terms of the emotional pull that?
Well, I don't know if I could do anything in 2 or 3 words.
You're allowed more.
I do get what you're saying, and that, like Quarter to Midnight is all about secrets. It's the secrets that people keep. And I think that's probably a common thread for most suspense, honestly. It's uncovering the secrets people keep, but why they're keeping them. There's that same secret is kept by at least 4 different people in the book, 2 of them good and 2 of them bad. And so the reasons that they're keeping this secret are very different. You have poor Xavier, who was 5 years old at the time. You have Gabe's father, who was, killed because he was trying to get to the bottom of the secret. So, I think so. I think that whole uncovering, I think we all understand secrets. We may not have murder as our secret. Hopefully we don't have murder as our secret, but I think that's a common, it's a common enough occurrence. I think people really understand that. But then there have been characters where I've wanted to gently preach, about something like, I had a character, and I did not realize this because he was one of these unplanned characters, and he just kind of popped up. He became one of my favorites. And it wasn't until the 3rd book in the Cincinnati series that I realized that this particular character had been a victim of a sexual assault as a child. And I had never written a hero with that backstory before. And it's not done as often as it should. And I don't have a lot of male readers, but there are a lot of female readers that know people, who have this. And there's definitely there's a way to deal with it, and there's a way not to deal with it, and I think people need to know. So just kind of inserting sometimes some of these I don't necessarily want to call them social causes, but things that are emotionally important to people that they might not even know about yet.
Well, if I were to define your core story, because it's my theory and I'm sticking with it. It is kind of this fundamental search for a family.
Yes, that too.
I see that in all your books, and the formation of a community. And I think that creates something we all want. You know what I mean? Everybody craves that kind of sense of belonging. And I think it works brilliantly for the kind of suspense that you do. Well, how would you define it, John? You know my theory. What do you?
Karen's core story?
Yeah, how?
Both of you, I would say both of you share one element in your core story, and that's the search for justice. You want to see that justice is done, that past wrongs have been righted, that order is restored. That's kind of the mystery suspense element to it. The connection between people, I think, is a strong core element in your books. Not necessarily just romantic, but connection between different generations, between different friends, neighbors, co-workers.
Community,
Community, yeah.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
And not everybody is lucky enough to have the kind of, warm family unit that I think most of us crave. I have a wonderful family, but I've also made a family. I have families. I've made a family wherever I've lived, and it's. I think we all have that need to, like you said, a need to belong to somebody, a need to belong to somewhere, to someone.
And to feel like we're important in their lives and they're important. It's just that sense of commitment to another human being. Yeah, I think that's just fundamental, and I think you pull on it brilliantly with your books. I think that's a huge part of your appeal to readers, at least. That's my theory.
Thank you. Now I'm realizing I didn't answer your question correctly, but thank you.
Well, I always, I usually start by telling somebody what I see as the core emotion in my story that I work with, and that gives them what I'm trying to get from them. which for me, it's almost always issues of trust.
Yeah.
That's always what it comes down to. And it's not that it's so unique or anything. It's just that's what pulls me into a plot, into a story.
Well, I think that the readers have a sense of trust of us too. Like John said, this whole sense of justice. I think that's one of the reasons people like to read romantic suspense. In the end, the hero and the heroine they're going to have each other at the end, whether it's a happily forever after or happily for now, but that the villain is going to get justice, and in real life, when that doesn't happen, and we can't control that, but in a book, that you're going to be able to, at the end, you close the cover, that villain has gotten what he's earned, whatever that is.
I think that's the value of genre.
Yes.
Because no matter which genre you're in, you read it for those core values, whatever it's celebrating. And boy, there's a reason that mystery and suspense are such huge, and romance are such huge genres, because those core values speak to all of us.
You risk breaking the reader's trust if you don't follow through on that. There's one best-selling author. It's been like 20 years that I read a book by this person, and they totally screwed it up at the end. And I did not, the resolution was destroyed. They set the clock back, and I'm like, no, never reading you again.
And I think we all have somebody that has unpleasantly surprised us.
Yes, that's a good way.
Probably some poor author who is desperate to do something different.
that could be very well, but yeah, it's just like there's nothing like a reader scorned, to paraphrase.
It's definitely true.
Because they come to an author and they come to a genre for a reason.
Yes. Well, I know that because my characters connect, I can bring them back and and have them do things. And I think it was my fourth book, and that villain is named Sue, and she's a woman from the very get-go. She's evil. In the very first chapter, she's kidnapping a child, and for her to further her own nefarious plan. And partway through, she's trying to get rid of the heroine's best friend, because the heroine's best friend's whispering good things in her ear, like, be careful of this person, be careful of this villain. And she runs her over in a grocery store parking lot, and she lives. But my editor was like, you can't do this. I'm like, but she's okay. I didn't realize I had broken such a cardinal rule. And I got away with it. I did get away with it in the end, but she's like, you're walking a line here. You're walking a really line.
Relax, the dog lives. Yeah.
Dog lives, the heroine lives. If you're a hero and a heroine, you're going to live to the end, and you will not be hurt in other books. So
there you go. A promise made, a promise kept by Karen Rose.
I did have one reader name her child after one of my characters, but only if I promised I would never let her go evil. And I'm like, yes, I can promise. I can promise that she will never go evil.
I don't think that a lot of real readers realize that many authors have this other side to them. And I'm always fascinated by that. And Karen, you impressed me when I learned that you have 2 patents.
I do.
I mean,
I'm impressed. Yeah.
I do. And if you ever had to take Metamucil, for your gastrointestinal tract, and you don't gag over it, that was part of my patent, was making it taste better.
Oh my gosh, that's a contribution to all mankind. I think.
It's the little things. It's the little things that help. But I was on a team of people, so it's a multi-person patent. I didn't actually come up with a process to make it smoother, but I made sure my job was, and I know more about the GI tract than I ever wanted to know, but my job was to make sure that by grinding it finer, it did not harm its efficacy. And how I did that, you don't want to know, but just trust that the data said it was okay, and we went forward with it. And it's the formula you can buy in the stores now.
Oh, well, the next time I buy some, I will think of you.
Yes, all people. When you have to drink Metamucil because you have problems, think of me. Yeah. But yeah, that was one of my first projects when I was a product development engineer. Mostly.
A quick question, just for research purposes. So how does the patent process work? What did you said it wasn't just you, it was a group.
Mm-hmm.
Are all your names on that patent then?
Yeah, I think there are like 3 or 4 of us on it. And I haven't seen the other guys in, 25 years. But yeah, because I worked for a big company. They make Crest toothpaste and Tide laundry. I mean, they make everything. And so they had a whole team of patent attorneys that took care of the entire process. But it was, show your data, and everything had to be, because it was the drug had, because it was a drug and it was classified as a drug, it had FDA ramifications too. So the record keeping was, we had to be meticulous as how we kept who was on the study, how many people were on the study. This is the results of the study. Everything had to be recorded in a specific kind of notebook, which you then give to the patent lawyer. And so but that was kind of what I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the specificity, and I enjoyed knowing that there's a process here. This is what you have to do to get to the end of this. And I did it twice. But I knew people who, by the time I got into my career, oh yeah, he says, this is probably like my 50th one. This guy says, I'm like, what do you do with them? Because I have mine were framed. And he's like, oh, I think most of them he used them to wallpaper his bathroom at home. And I was like, okay.
Well, that explains why you're attracted to process in terms of solving the mystery and solving and getting to the conclusion of your plot. It is a logical process when you look back.
Flow charts. That was how I thought when I was, when I worked in the field. Everything has a process, and if there are multiple strands of story, they all have to come together and they touch each other at certain places, and then they all kind of braid together. At the end, it's all a flow chart in my head. And when I get stuck, what I end up going back to, and I do a reverse flow chart. I get to the end and I'm like, okay, so I get 2/3 of the way to the end, and I'm not really sure how to get back on. I'm usually off my outline, and how do I get back? And I start with, a Post-it note that says the bad guy is caught. And for that to happen, this has to happen. And then I work my way backwards. I make a flow chart, and then I write the rest of the book.
Tip of the day for any of you out there who are thinking of writing, here's this Karen Rose's tip for how to track a plot.
Yeah, and it works. I've done it. I probably do it for probably 3/4 of my books. I've done it. And it never fails. I get to that point and I'm like, okay, it's time to bring out the Post-it notes. And I just use the cheap ones. This is a very cheap, you don't need special software. You need a pencil and you need a pack of Post-it notes that cost you like $1 at the CVS. And I'm like, oh yeah, but maybe I can just kind of push through it. Maybe I don't have to do the Post-it. I try that for like a week and I'm like, crap, I have to go back and I bring out the Post-it. If I'd done this a week ago, I'd be finished already.
That sounds like a version of me when I get desperate. I go write the last scene and then I realize what I need to make the last scene.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's the same thing. You just don't do
Reverse
it on
engineering.
Post-it.
I like the term reverse engineering. That sounds a lot cooler than I have to write the last scene to figure out.
Scrambling to finish.
Exactly what you're doing.
In my role as timekeeper, before we run out of time, we do have some questions from your many fans. And the first question I see is for both you, Karen and Jayne, and it's, can you talk a little bit about how much input you have into your covers and book titles and how important that is to your story?
Well, okay, so I am not a graphic person. I think, Jayne, you asked me, do I see things or do I hear them? I hear them. I had input to one book cover. They did what I asked and it was really bad. And so I have never, I mean, now I'll just say, could we do something a little different? Maybe the colors or there was one that they had the face and she looks so sad. She don't look scared. She looks sad. And my only feedback was she looks like she's about to break into a country song. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we know how to fix that. But so I'll give them little, like my first reaction, especially if it's a good one. But most of the time I stay out of the cover. I mean, I stay out of the whole cover conversation. I'm not, that's not my forte. And titles are hard for me because titles have to be like 3 to 5 words. That's hard for me because I'm not good with, you give me a few words and that don't work. But I did come up with Quarter to Midnight. A lot of times it's a whole team. Like I'll come up with the straw horse and everybody shoots it down and comes up with a better one. And probably, I would say probably 2/3 of them are mine. 1/3 of them are somebody else's. But now, Jayne, how many books have you written with all of you and all of your alter egos?
I don't know. I stopped counting because it makes me feel too old. We just don't go there, Karen.
What, 100? Are you close to 100 or?
Gotta be close, or not even over, possibly over 100.
It's over 100. Don't forget, I started out in category with the shorter books and those, and to survive in category, you basically had to be doing, when I was coming up, you had to be doing 4 or 5, sometimes 6 a year.
Yeah.
And so that racked up a lot of early in my career when I had the energy. but I'm with you on the covers.
Your own?
Huh?
Do you title your own?
No, well, I try, but I'm like you, that's not my forte. It's a different kind of mindset to be able to get a snapshot of the book in a title. It's like cover art. I don't see the books, I hear them, and I'm no good with cover art. And I had exactly the same experience with you did. The one time I tried to tell them how to do cover art, it was a horrible failure. And
yep,
I could blame no one but myself.
Back away from the easel. I mean, I am no artist. But this book, it was interesting. With Quarter to Midnight, it was my writing group. Thank you. I have one too. It's so pretty. We were all talking and I was asking them, I said, I need cover. I need title ideas. And so we were all coming up with the title ideas and everything that had quarter in it, because it was in the French Quarter. And one of the guys said Quarter to Midnight. And I was like, oh, because the first scene, the scene in the prologue, it's not a huge spoiler. The prologue is where Gabe's father is murdered. The hero's father is murdered. And the last text he sends to Gabe is like at 11:30. And when my friend said Quarter to Midnight, I was like, oh, I can make his last text be 15 minutes later. And that's the book. And so it gets referred to a couple times in the book as, the last time I spoke with my father was Quarter to Midnight, so that's kind of, the instigating event that starts the book rolling. But most of the time, I'm not that clever with it. And this one, again, I wasn't clever with this one either. My friend came up with the title.
Yeah, same for me.
The next question we have for both of you is, what is your relationship as authors to social media platforms? Do you have favorites?
Well, I do Twitter. because for me, I have ADHD, I have terrible ADHD. For me, Twitter is just like, I go on, I look at a few, I can pop off, and I rarely get caught in the rabbit hole, but it's because I just kind of go in, and it's almost like, guerrilla social media. I go in and I pop out. I found out how to do Instagram this morning. And I found out how to do Instagram live, should I say. I knew how to post on Instagram, but yeah, that was a lesson. So I'm not really, I do it. It's not an organic thing for me. It's more like, oh yeah, I got to remember to go on and do this.
I'm in the same boat. You're way ahead of me on Instagram. I still haven't figured out the reels or whatever, the movie picture.
Yeah, they're starting to do that now, aren't they, on Instagram, where you can do little movies or.
Yeah. And like the one I did today was it was a live interview, and I think it lasted for about 15-20 minutes.
Oh.
So it was, much longer. I thought the Instagram things were limited to like 2 minutes or something like that. And this one was, I'm like, oh, okay. But I actually was late to the party because I was waiting in the wrong place for the invitation, because I didn't know. I'm not of that generation. But I can be taught, so I will not mess it up the next time. But yeah, it's not, I think people who are, the 30s, the 20s and the 30s coming up, they have no idea about what kind of technical revolution this has been for all of us who grew up, where you had to get up and change the channel on the TV because you didn't have a remote control.
Landline telephones. Yeah.
That's right. That horrible little fax sound. Yeah.
I was thrilled when they came out with correcting ribbon on the IBM Selectric. That was like a big deal.
Huge revolutionary advance. Absolutely.
I remember I was talking to my family. I was talking to one of my daughters. She's almost 30 now, but when she was little, she's like, Mom, when you had to know something, how did you find it? Because you didn't have the internet. I'm like, well, you go to the library, and there was this thing called the card catalog. You got the little card, you took it. Sometimes they had the book, and she was like, with every detail, more and more horrified. It would have taken forever. And I'm like, yeah. So, respect your mother. I've been through that.
That's fun.
We're almost out of time, but I do want to touch a few things before we have to leave. Jayne, can you tell us about what's next for you as an author? Because I've had a sneak peek at Sweetwater and the Witch, and it is going to be the book of September.
Oh, well, thank you. The dust bunnies will be thrilled. That's
popcorn and fireworks for everybody.
Well, Sweetwater and the Witch is real quick. Comes out under my Jane Castle name, although I think the books now say Jayne Ann Krentz writing as Jane Castle or something. And this is my futuristic romantic suspense. I basically write romantic suspense, and I do it in 3 different worlds, and that's what I do. And this is the one that's set in the future. Has a strong psychic vibe. I'm really fun. All 3 of my worlds now, I've infused the psychic vibe into it because that's my thing. So yes, September.
So is Sweetwater a location or Sweetwater a name?
Sweetwater is the name of a long-standing family of professional assassins.
Oh.
That comes from, Sweetwaters have appeared in other of my series set in other eras. And Sweetwaters are now in a new business, but they're not entirely out of the old business. So
okay.
That's true. And that is, I will tell you, surprisingly tricky. Using an assassin hero brings up some serious conflicts of, moral clauses and stuff. I hope I walk the right line. They only hunt monsters.
Yes, they're hunters. Yeah. And
okay.
That's your and Karen, Quarter to Midnight is just out. Can you tell us? You've told us there's something coming after that.
Yes, Cold-Blooded Liar comes in March, whole new series. And again, it'll be the same characters throughout. The same 2 main characters throughout. But I'll continue with my, brand new couples and every book series. So I'll have 2. And the next New Orleans book comes out next summer, and it's called Beneath Dark Waters. And most of it happens in the bayou.
That's a wonderful title. And if readers want to learn more about your books and you, do you both have websites, or how can they discover?
Well, mine is KarenRoseBooks.com, and on the front page, it's got a list of reading order, and they're all grouped by color as to which city they take place in, which series.
And I'm JayneAnnKrentz.com. So same thing. I tried to put everything in there for organizing by series and so to make it easy to find the series within the long list.
Now, is Sweetwater and the Witch is a brand new series then?
No, it's part of the Harmony series, which is my it's been a long running series from Set on Another Planet, Harmony.
Okay, so in this one I have not yet read, so I know I'm going to, because this is I love books like that. If for people who are just starting on that series and want to catch up before September, where do they start?
You're fine reading it just on its own, but yeah,
I like to start at the beginning of something though.
Yeah, you're one of those people when you come into the bookstore that I just want to smack, but
sorry.
But Jayne, what's the first in the series? Back to Karen.
After Dark.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you do have a new trilogy in January, Jayne, don't you? As your Krentz?
Starting a new one, yeah. That'll be my contemporary romantic suspense. It's called The Lost Night Files, and it's about three women who lost a night of their lives in some mysterious way and are seeking answers, and they're doing it through a podcast. Go looking for answers.
That's fun.
Hope so.
You're always so au courant, Jayne. You latch on to those things.
Yeah, that's not what you said when I screwed up on TikTok. When you
Well, I guess we could say if you're having trouble with Instagram, we know who you should call. That would be Christina Dodd, Queen of Technology. I can't believe our time has gone by so fast. An hour just flew by. The Poison Pen has just been so very fortunate to have with us today two of our favorite authors, Karen Rose, whose new book is Quarter to Midnight, and Jayne Ann Krentz, who has a book coming in September under her Jane Castle name. So if you'd like to order Jayne's books, we will have copies signed by her available to reserve. If you'd like a copy now of Karen Rose's book, and you do want a copy now because it's the great way to pass away your time this summer with a thrilling read, we have copies of Quarter to Midnight. And I'd like to thank both Jayne and Karen for taking time to visit us virtually today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank all of those listening into another virtual author event at the Poison Pen Bookstore. We hope to see you back here next time.
Jayne, thank you. Thank you for offering to this has been so much fun.
This has been great. Thoroughly enjoyed seeing you again. We should do this more often.
We should.
Thank you, and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
If I lose you all, Jayne and Karen, thanks. I'm terrible at clicking things.
So do you want me to click leave now?
Yes, I think we're all set.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.